Welcome back from your long weekend. I wanted to touch base and tell everyone and show everyone how I've been teaching rounding, and this is lesson 1.4. The first thing we talked about is looking at a number line and talking about the midpoint. And I always ask the question of what's the midpoint, because it helps them decide if it's closer to one or the other. And so the halfway or the midpoint for 0 to 10 would be 5. And so the students recognize that 5 is the midpoint. You can also do this for the hundreds, 300, 400, anything like that, asking what the halfway or the midway point or midpoint is for 100 and 200, and it would be 150. It's good for them to recognize the pattern that the midpoint normally will always have a 5 in it. From there we talked about rounding, and I stress that you really have to pay attention to what the directions are asking, and in this case it's asking us to round to the nearest hundreds. And so we had a funny story we read in class and we acted it out, but what I taught them then is that you need to circle the hundreds place, and in this case the 4 is the hundreds. And then we always underline the messenger or the digit to the right of the hundreds place. And from there we ask, is this closer to 400 or 500? And to figure that out, you look at the number to the right and you ask, well, has the 3 hit the midpoint of 5? And they say, no, it hasn't. So it's either going to stay at 400 or go up to 500. And in this case, the messenger is telling them to stay at 400. And so you keep the 4, and then it's off with the others' heads. Another example, 681, circling the hundreds place, and then you have the messenger to the right. Asking, is this closer to 600 or 700? Our messenger is telling us that it's past the midpoint of 5, and so that this 600 is actually going to go up to 700. It's closer to 700. A couple more examples with other digits that are added. We're still circling the hundreds place and underlining the digit to the right. Now I ask the kids, is there anybody that we need to keep? And they should be saying yes, we need to keep the thousands place. And then from there ask, is it closer to 600 or 700? This has not hit the midpoint, the tens place has not hit it, so it needs to stay at 600, and it's off with their heads. The next one, still circling the hundreds place, asking if there's anything to keep, and in this case we're going to keep our 64,000. Underline the digit to the right. Now if it's hit the midpoint of 5, it does go up. 5 or more, it goes up. So is it going to stay at 500 or go up to 600? And the student should say it goes up to 600, and then the messenger and any other digits become zeros. More examples with rounding to the thousands place, again paying attention to what the directions say. You're now going to be circling the digit in the thousands place and underlining the number to the right of it. Is this closer to 8,000 or 9,000? Look at the messenger to see what they're telling us to do. It has not hit the midpoint, so it needs to stay at 8,000, and everything else becomes a 0. Next one, circling the thousands place. Is this closer to 1,000 or 2,000? Look at your messenger. It has hit the midpoint of 5, so it's going to go up to 2,000. It is closer to 2,000 and not 1,000. A couple more examples with having other digits. You have the 9 in the thousands place. The student should say, oh, I have somebody I need to keep, which is the 7 in the 10,000s place. Is this closer to 9,000? Or are we going to upgrade over here? And this one gets a little tricky. We haven't gone over it in class yet, but just to show, this has hit the midpoint, and so we need to regroup, and instead this 7 is actually going to become an 8. And so it's actually closer to 80,000. That one would be more difficult for them, and again, we have not gone over that one in class, but I wanted to share one. Last one, circling the thousands place, noticing that we need to keep our 10,000s place for now, underlining the number or the digit to the right. Is it closer to 4,000 or 5,000? They should say the midpoint, it has not hit, and so it's going to stay at 4,000. And everything else becomes a 0. I would like, if you're looking at this video, for the students to try answering these 2 questions and round to the nearest thousands just on a piece of scratch paper, and they can bring it in for extra dojo points.